What, Leo? Say that again, you goddamn leech. My voice, usually a carefully modulated instrument of precision in sterile boardrooms, cracked with a raw venom I barely recognized. The phone line hummed, a thin thread connecting me to a betrayal so profound it felt like a physical blow. I needed it, Elena. For the business. It was a loan, I swear. I'll pay it back. Every single dollar. Leo's voice, a familiar cadence of whining charm that had manipulated our parents for years, now sounded thin, reedy, utterly devoid of genuine remorse. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was blind. I clutched the phone tighter, my knuckles white against the cool metal of my desk. Outside my penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago, the first bitter winds of winter howled, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Below, the city lights blurred into streaks, but the image burned into my mind was crystal clear. Maya's X-rays, the delicate curve of her spine, the shadowed fracture that demanded immediate, expensive attention. Alone? I spat, the word a bitter taste on my tongue. From my daughter's surgery fund? From the $212,000 I painstakingly saved from our inheritance, the settlement, everything I had left after the accident? The money specifically earmarked for Maya's spinal fusion, you parasitic bastard? Silence. A pregnant, damning silence that stretched, then broke with a soft, dismissive chuckle from Leo. Come on, Elena, you're being dramatic. You always are. She's fine. Kids bounce back. And besides, it's not like you needed it right this second. I've got a big deal coming up, a huge investment opportunity. This is going to make us both rich. You'll see. That was it. The casual disregard, the utter lack of empathy, the familiar pattern of his self-serving delusion. My carefully constructed composure, a fortress built over years of dealing with financial predators, crumbled into dust. My vision narrowed, focusing on a single point. The man who had just stolen my daughter's future. I remembered the day the email arrived, a cold, clinical notification from the bank. Transaction alert. Large sum withdrawal. At first, I dismissed it as a glitch, a spam email. My accounts were locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Two-factor authentication, biometric scans, complex passwords that would make a cryptographer weep. But the pit in my stomach insisted I check. And there it was, a gaping, horrifying hole in Maya's dedicated medical fund. Not a glitch, a violation. My fingers, usually dancing across keyboards with the precision of a concert pianist, trembled as I navigated through the bank's security logs. The IP address, the login times. And then, the transfer details. A series of complex, layered transactions leading to an offshore account registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. A classic money laundering funnel. And the initial access point? My secondary email, one I rarely used, compromised through a phishing scam that, in hindsight, I had brushed off. I was an expert, a goddamn forensic financial analyst for the Department of Treasury, specializing in tracking down white-collar criminals, unraveling intricate webs of fraud and embezzlement. My job was to see the patterns, to anticipate the moves, to bring down the very people who pulled stunts like this. And yet, I had been blindsided. Not by a faceless hacker, but by my own blood. The discovery had hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of my lungs. My brother, my younger brother, Leo, the one I'd practically raised after our parents passed, the one I'd always tried to protect, despite his endless stream of bad choices and even worse excuses. He was the only one who knew about that secondary email, the one who'd casually asked about my old online habits a few weeks prior. He'd meticulously harvested the information, piece by agonizing piece. The betrayal was absolute. Rich? I whispered into the phone, my voice low and dangerously calm. You think you're going to be rich? Leo, you just signed your own death warrant. Not with a bullet, but with a federal indictment. You tangled with the wrong person. You stole from my daughter. He laughed again, a high, nervous sound. Don't be ridiculous, Elena. You wouldn't. I'm your brother. No, I stated, the word a steel trap closing. You're a criminal. And I am a law enforcement officer. And right now, Leo, family means absolutely nothing to me. All I see is a thief who jeopardized my daughter's life. You just turned this into a zero-sum game, little brother. And you're about to find out exactly what that means. I hung up, not waiting for his reply. The phone felt heavy in my hand, a weapon I had just fired. The chill wind outside seemed to seep into my bones, but it was nothing compared to the cold, hard resolve settling in my heart. Leo Vance had messed with the wrong analyst, and I was going to make him pay. Every single dollar, and then some. The kitchen descended into a deathly silence after the click of the hang-up. I stood there, staring into the darkened expanse of my Chicago penthouse, feeling as though I had been flayed alive in the middle of a brutal winter. My reflection in the window showed a stranger, a woman whose eyes burned with a cold, predatory light. Mom? I spun around. Maya, my 12-year-old daughter, was leaning heavily on her crutches in the hallway. The accident 2 years ago had left a jagged scar on her spine, forcing her into a slight, painful-looking tilt, but her gaze had never lost its razor-sharp clarity. I heard you shouting, she said, her voice eerily steady. It was Uncle Leo again, wasn't it? I didn't want to lie. In this house, we dealt in the currency of truth. He took the money, Maya, all of it, all $212,000. Maya didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She just looked at the laptop sitting open on the dining table. He's not very smart, is he? He thinks because you're his sister, you're just a family bank. He forgot what you actually do for a living. She was right. Leo's fatal mistake wasn't the theft. It was the sheer arrogance of thinking he understood my world. I pulled my work laptop toward me, a rugged, encrypted beast issued by the Department of the Treasury. Go to bed, Maya, I said softly. No, she countered, swinging herself toward the table with practiced determination. That was my surgery money. I want to see how you break him. I looked at my daughter, a warrior in pajamas, and felt a grim, icy pride. Fine. Watch. For the next 4 hours, the apartment became a tactical operations center. I didn't just look at bank statements. I dove into the metadata. As a criminal financial analyst, I accessed the government's suspicious activity reporting system. Leo thought he was clever. He had routed the funds through a series of digital hops, from an e-wallet to a peer-to-peer lending platform, and finally into an account held by Vanguard Acquisitions, LLC. Vanguard? That sounds like a real company, Mom, Maya whispered, leaning in. It's a shell, Maya, I explained, my fingers flying across the keys. A ghost. No employees, no office, just a P.O. box in a dilapidated strip mall outside Las Vegas. I ran the LLC through the federal database, and my heart turned to stone. Vanguard Acquisitions wasn't just a random shell. It was a flagged entity, a known washpipe for an illegal offshore gambling ring. He didn't invest it, I hissed through gritted teeth. He gambled it. He was chasing a loss. I traced the last login IP for the Vanguard account. It wasn't in the Caymans. It was located in a luxury suite at the Drake Hotel, less than 2 miles from where I sat. He was right here in Chicago, likely popping champagne with the money meant to fix my daughter's spine. I bypassed his cloud security. He had never bothered to change the family password I'd set up years ago. I found a text thread with Sienna, his manipulative girlfriend, Leo. The bitch didn't even notice until it was bone dry. The $212,000 is washed. We hit the tables tonight, then the 6 a.m. flight to Tulum. First class, babe. Sienna, are you sure she won't call the cops? Leo, Elena, please, she's all bark, no bite. She loves me too much to see me in a jumpsuit. By the time she even finds the name Vanguard, we'll be sipping margaritas on a beach. All bark, huh? I muttered. A lethal smile touched my lips. I wasn't going to call local PD. They'd file it as a civil dispute and let him board that plane. I needed a nuclear option. I logged into the FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network portal, and flagged the transaction as suspected terrorist financing and international money laundering. It was a total burn strategy. When those tags are activated, the system automatically triggers a global freeze on every account associated with Leo's name and IP. My personal phone began to vibrate violently on the table. Caller ID. Leo. I let it ring. Once, twice, 10 times. I wanted him to feel the panic marinating in his marrow. Suddenly, a text flashed on the screen. Leo. Elena, what the hell did you do? All my cards are declined. The hotel is threatening to call security. Pick up the phone! The glow from the laptop screen was the only light in the room, casting long, jagged shadows against the marble walls. It was 3 a.m., the witching hour in the world of high finance, the time when the ghosts of bad decisions finally catch up to the living. He's calling again, Maya said, her voice small but steady. My phone was dancing across the countertop, buzzing like a trapped hornet. I didn't pick up. I was busy drafting a formal declaration for my contact at the FBI's white-collar crime division. In the eyes of the law, Leo wasn't my brother anymore. He was Subject 49 Baker, a primary node in a suspected money laundering network. Maya, go to the safe in my closet, I said, my eyes locked on the scrolling code. Bring me the black folder labeled contingency. As she swung herself away on her crutches, the rhythmic thump-click of her movement served as a heartbeat for my rage. While she was gone, I pulled up the GPS data from Leo's phone. He was no longer at the Drake Hotel. The little blue dot was moving fast, heading south on Michigan Avenue. He's running, I whispered. Here, Mom. Maya returned, handing me the folder. I opened it to find the physical titles to our family property and the original trust documents. But more importantly, it held an encrypted flash drive containing years of insurance, records of every emergency loan I had ever given Leo, every bar tab I'd covered, and every lie I'd documented. I had been a forensic auditor for 12 years. I never entered a deal without a paper trail. Why did he do it, Mom? Maya asked suddenly, sitting on the floor with her back against the kitchen island. He knew it was for my surgery. He saw me cry when the doctor said I might never walk without a brace. I stopped typing. The rage, which had been a cold, hard lump in my chest, flared into a white-hot flame. Because to people like Leo, other people aren't human, Maya. We are just resources. He didn't see your pain. He only saw $212,000 worth of missed opportunities for himself. He thinks the world owes him a luxury life because he's special. Is he special? No, I said, my voice dropping an octave, heavy with venom. He's a parasite, and the problem with parasites is that they don't know when to stop feeding until the host is dead. But I'm not dying, Maya. I'm cutting him off. The phone rang again. This time, I answered. I didn't say a word. I just waited, listening to the frantic background noise of a city cab. "Elena, you bitch!" Leo's scream was so loud Maya flinched. "The feds are at the hotel. They were asking for me at the front desk." "What did you tell them?" "I'm in a cab and I have no cash because my fucking apps are locked." "I told them the truth, Leo," I said, my voice a jagged edge of ice. "I told them you were laundering money for a gambling syndicate, which technically you are. It was a mistake. I was going to double it and put it back before you even woke up. Sienna said, 'I don't care what your trophy girlfriend said,'" I interrupted. "You stole from a child. You stole from my child. Do you have any idea what the mandatory minimum is for federal wire fraud and money laundering when it involves a protected medical fund? Fix it! Call them off!" He was sobbing now, the bravado from his earlier texts gone, replaced by the pathetic whimpering of a cornered rat. "I'm your brother, Elena. We're the same blood." "Blood is just a liquid, Leo. It doesn't make us family. Loyalty makes us family. Respect makes us family. You're just a DNA. A match with a felony record." "I'm coming over there," he spat, his voice suddenly shifting back to a desperate, ugly aggression. "You're going to give me the keys to the safe. You're going to call your bosses and tell them you made a mistake. Or I swear to God, Elena, I'll ruin you." "Is that a threat, Leo?" I asked, a predatory smile spreading across my face. I looked at the screen. The FB I had just pinged his cab's location. They were 2 minutes behind him. "It's a promise. I'm 5 minutes away." I hung up and looked at Maya. "Go to your room and lock the door. Don't come out until I say the code word, audit." "Be careful, Mom," she whispered. "Don't worry, baby," I said, my voice trembling with a terrifying, righteous fury. "I've been auditing monsters for a living. Your uncle is just a small-time amateur." I sat in the darkness of the living room, watching the street through the slats of the blinds. Red and blue lights were silent in the distance, creeping closer. The wolf was coming to the door, thinking he was the hunter. He had no idea that I had already rewritten the ending of his story. The chime of the elevator was the cocking of a hammer. I sat in my high-backed velvet chair, cloaked in the shadows of the living room. The only light came from the pale moon and the rhythmic cold blinking of my laptop's status light. Thud, thud, thud. The mahogany door groaned under Leo's fist. "Elena, open this damn door. I know you're in there. Open up." I didn't move. I wanted him to taste the copper of his own panic. Finally, I spoke, my voice cutting through the wood like a blade. "The door is unlocked, Leo. Walk into your consequences." The handle snapped. Leo burst in, looking like a man dragged through a hedge. His designer shirt was soaked in sweat, his eyes bloodshot and wild. Sienna hovered behind him, clutching a Gucci bag like a life preserver. "Where is it?" Leo roared, stumbling toward me. "Where's the safe? Give me the codes and call your contact at the Treasury. Tell them it was an authorized transfer. Tell them you gave me the password." I leaned back, crossing my legs with agonizing slowness. "Running from the feds is exhausting, isn't it?" "Shut up!" he screamed, lunging toward my desk. "I owe serious people money. If that Vanguard account stays frozen, I'm a dead man by sunrise." "Then you should have thought about that before you treated Maya's spine like a jackpot at a casino," I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Sienna stepped forward, her voice trembling. Elena, please, we just need enough to get to Mexico. We're family, right? Family? I stood up, my movement fluid and predatory. I walked until I was inches from Leo's face. He smelled of cheap gin and expensive desperation. You watched him wire $212,000 away from a girl who needs a titanium rod in her back to stand straight. You're not family. You're an accessory. Leo grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging in. Give me the override code, Elena. Now, or I'll tear this place apart. There is no override, Leo, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Once I flagged it as terrorist financing, the keys were handed to the Department of Justice. Even I can't stop the clock now. You lying bitch! He raised his hand, his face a mask of pure hatred. Do it! I dared him. Hit me! Add assault on a federal officer to the wire fraud charges. See how that looks on your indictment. He froze, his hand trembling. In that moment, the silence shattered. From the street below, the sharp whoop-whoop of sirens erupted. Red and blue lights began to dance across the ceiling like a chaotic disco. The chime of the elevator was the cocking of a hammer. I sat in my high-backed velvet chair, cloaked in the shadows of the living room. The only light came from the pale moon and the rhythmic cold blinking of my laptop's status light. Thud. 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 The mahogany door groaned under Leo's fist. Elena, open this damn door. I know you're in there. Open up. I didn't move. I wanted him to taste the copper of his own panic. Finally, I spoke, my voice cutting through the wood like a blade. The door is unlocked, Leo. Walk into your consequences. The handle snapped. Leo burst in, looking like a man dragged through a hedge. His designer shirt was soaked in sweat, his eyes bloodshot and wild. Sienna hovered behind him, clutching a Gucci bag like a life preserver. Where is it? Leo roared, stumbling toward me. Where's the safe? Give me the codes and call your contact at the Treasury. Tell them it was an authorized transfer. Tell them you gave me the password. I leaned back, crossing my legs with agonizing slowness. Running from the feds is exhausting, isn't it? Shut up, he screamed, lunging toward my desk. I owe serious people money. If that Vanguard account stays frozen, I'm a dead man by sunrise. Then you should have thought about that before you treated Maya's spine like a jackpot at a casino, I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Sienna stepped forward, her voice trembling. Elena, please, we just need enough to get to Mexico. We're family, right? Family? I stood up, my movement fluid, fluid and predatory. I walked until I was inches from Leo's face. He smelled of cheap gin and expensive desperation. You watched him wire $212,000 away from a girl who needs a titanium rod in her back to stand straight. You're not family. You're an accessory. Leo grabbed my shoulders, his fingers digging in. Give me the override code, Elena, now, or I'll tear this place apart. There is no override, Leo, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Once I flagged it as terrorist financing, the keys were handed to the Department of Justice. Even I can't stop the clock now. You lying bitch! He raised his hand, his face a mask of pure hatred. Do it, I dared him. Hit me! Add assault on a federal officer to the wire fraud charges. See how that looks on your indictment. He froze, his hand trembling. In that moment, the silence shattered. From the street below, the sharp whoop-whoop of sirens erupted. Red and blue lights began to dance across the ceiling like a chaotic disco. The following weeks were a blur of cold legal rooms and sterile hospital corridors. The federal prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman who took one look at Maya's medical files and decided to go for the jugular, didn't need much help from me. Leo's digital footprint was less of a trail and more of a blazing neon sign. With the evidence I'd gathered, the metadata, the text logs with Sienna, and the link to the illegal gambling ring, the plea deal they offered him was insulting. He took it anyway. 15 years in a federal penitentiary. I stood behind the double-paned glass of the observation room as the judge handed down the sentence. Leo looked small in his orange jumpsuit, stripped of his designer labels and his hollow bravado. He didn't look at me. He couldn't. "Mom, is it over now?" I looked down at Maya. She was sitting in her wheelchair, her back braced, but her eyes were brighter than I'd seen them in years. "It's over, baby," I said, resting my hand on her shoulder. "The funds were recovered from the seizure of the Vanguard accounts. Every cent of that $212,000 plus interest is back where it belongs." "And Uncle Leo?" "He's going somewhere where he can't hurt anyone else. He's becoming a ghost, just like the companies he tried to hide behind." The surgery took place on a crisp Tuesday morning in February. I sat in the waiting room for 6 hours, the familiar scent of antiseptic and floor wax clogging my lungs. But unlike the night of the theft, I wasn't alone with my rage. I had a laptop open, working on a new case, but my heart was in that operating theater. When the surgeon finally emerged, he was smiling. "The spinal fusion was a total success, Ms. Vance. The titanium supports are holding perfectly. It'll be a long road of physical therapy, but I expect her to be walking unassisted by summer." I didn't cry. I simply nodded, a profound sense of peace finally settling into my marrow. I had done my job. The audit was closed. 3 months later, the Chicago spring had finally broken through the icy grip of winter. I stood on the edge of the sidewalk in Millennium Park, watching the tourists take photos of the silver bean. "Watch me, Mom! Look!" Maya was 10 feet away. She wasn't using the crutches. Her gait was slow, deliberate, and a little stiff, but she was upright. Each step was a triumph over the betrayal that had almost cost her everything. She moved with a focused intensity, her face set in a grimace of effort that smoothed into a grin as she reached a park bench. "I did it!" she panted, sitting down. 10 yards! No help! "You did it," I whispered, sitting beside her. The wind off the lake was cool, but the sun on our faces was warm. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from the Bureau of Prisons, a recorded message from an inmate. "Leo." I deleted it without listening. I didn't need to hear his excuses, his threats, or his hollow apologies. In my world, once an account is settled and the debt is written off, you don't reopen the books. "People ask me if I feel guilty," I said to Maya, though I was mostly saying it to myself. "About sending my own brother to prison. About breaking the family." Maya looked at me, her gaze far older than her 12 years. "You didn't break the family, Mom." "He did. You just cleared the wreckage so we could build something new." She was right. Sometimes, to save the body, you have to amputate the limb. It's painful, and you might feel a phantom itch where the connection used to be, but it's the only way to survive. I looked out at the city skyline, a grid of numbers, transactions, and hidden stories. I was still Elena Vance. I was still a predator of predators, but as I watched my daughter stand up again, reaching for my hand to take the next 10 yards, I realized I was finally more than just a forensic analyst. The balance was no longer zero. We were finally in the black. "Ready to go home?" I asked. Maya squeezed my hand, her grip strong and sure. "Ready." We walked together, one slow step at a time, leaving the shadows of the past exactly where they belonged, buried in a closed file, under a mountain of evidence. Family is everything, but don't let blood be an excuse for someone to bleed you dry. Covering for a toxic relative isn't love. It's just giving them a free pass to hurt you again. Bottom line, keep your boundaries and your finances crystal clear. Protecting your children's future isn't selfish. It's your responsibility. Sometimes, standing your ground and cutting ties is the only way to find real peace. Thanks for watching Elena and Maya's story. I hope it kept you on the edge of your seat. Have you ever dealt with a situation like this? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss our next intense episode. See you in the next one.